Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Toilets and Titles. My name is Justin Stevens, and I'm back at you with another Waiver Wire episode. Feels kind of odd tonight because I was about to try to introduce a guest, but I feel so wrong to introduce him as a guest. He's been my co-host for so long on the main show for Toilets and Titles, but feel awesome to be able to have somebody else on the episode with me. It'll make it a little bit more interesting, so you're not just reading my dull readings to myself, which is really legitimately what it feels like most weeks. But Nate, looks like you're live from another hotel room. What's going on tonight, buddy?
Not much, man. I'm excited to be here. I said kind of jokingly earlier that I'd just kind of be sitting in the back listening because I wouldn't have time tomorrow to hear the show, and you invited me on, so I was I'm pumped to be here. Yeah, I'm in a hotel down a half hour from St. Louis. Be here for the next 3 weeks. So, well, I go home for Thanksgiving, but otherwise I'll be here for 3 weeks. So,
well, it's nice this one gets broken up a little bit with a little break in between.
Oh yeah.
Well, for the record, I mean, when you're one of the founding fathers of the show, you don't really need an invite, Like, we've crashed the other guys' shows from time to time, so you're welcome to crash anytime.
That's what I'll do this week. I'll just get on random shows all week. So
there you go. I like it. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. The Monday Night Football game is wrapping up right now, and it looks like it was a hell of a close battle there. Thanks for completely ruining a couple of huge leagues for me there. McVay and Stafford and the Rams, and really, honestly, I want to blame it all on Robert Woods.
I think Goff might have done better than Stafford.
Yeah, dude, I don't know. That was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. And honestly, it might even be my fault because I'm the one that needed all this good energy to happen to the Rams. And with my luck, of course, it's not going to happen that way,
Yeah. Colts won. Who cares, right?
Yeah. There you go. We're still in that playoff hunt.
I know. You're all right.
A sub 500 team still in the playoff hunt. Sounds like half of my fantasy leagues right now. But
NFC East last year.
What's that?
I said it was like the NFC East last year.
There you go. Yeah. So, unfortunately, the Titans are ruining the AFC South from being the new NFC East. But all right, we're going to jump into it here. First, we're going to talk about the Patreon, in case any of you guys catch this episode a little bit later. The Patreons are the ones that get this episode first. I will be emailing this episode to them tonight. If you would like to join the Patreon, just go to that down there at the bottom of the screen here. You're going to see Toilets and Titles, or patreon.com/Toilets and Titles. Sign up for at least the $3 minimum per month to get into our Discord. We have a $5 minimum per month that gets you this Waiver Wire episode and any of the Waiver Wire episodes early. Sometimes only exclusively to the Waiver Wire, or exclusively to the Patreon supporters. And then usually we like to upload them on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter the next day, but maybe a little bit later the next day. But it kind of gives you a little bit of a heads up. You can get this early and still listen to everybody else's material tomorrow. You'll have time that way. So it works out great for the Patreons. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Facebook, Podbean, When a Family Breaks, Spotify. We that's all for the main show for the Dynasty Down Under guys. The Joe Knows episodes, DFS episode, and then of course a little bit something about the other one. If you want to kind of mention that real quick.
Yeah, for sure. Dollars to Deuces with myself and Rich on Wednesday nights. Usually, it's been like 10:30 Central Time. So yeah, check us out. We've been, I'm not gonna say we're handing out, free money, but we don't do too terrible. So it's been fun.
No, actually, and Uncle Steve is an avid listener or watcher of your show. I don't know if he does it on Facebook or YouTube or whatever, but he says that his plan every single week is that whenever there's a game that you and Rich both agree on, that's the games that he bets on, and he's won a lot of money that way this season by doing it that way. So he won't listen to either of you individually, but when you guys are together, he said you're pretty dead on. So that's pretty awesome.
Well, I got a quarter of a brain, and Rich has got probably at least 3/4, so that's like one full brain. Works pretty good, right?
There you go. I like it. All right, so I'm not going to bore you guys with all the details of all the shows. By now, you know where they're at. Just check us out. We're constantly on YouTube. We're constantly on Twitter. The Twitter handle is at Toilets Titles. My Twitter handle is at JustinFF_. Of course, Nate's Twitter handle is right there at Nate_Dirt19. Is that right?
Yep.
All right, cool. And then, of course, our lovely producer, Andrew Campy's in the background at Andrew Campy. He's back there pulling all the ropes and opening all the curtains at just all the right times. Before we jump into it, I want to talk about last week's successes because we actually had a lot of them this time. We had a lot of players that we gave you on last week's waiver wire episode, and if they were available in your league and you went out and got them, you probably did pretty well with your streaming options. Some of these guys aren't just streamers. You're going to want to keep them for the rest of the season. I'm going to start off with a couple of IDP gems that Coach gave you. Jonathan Cooper is still only 2% owned in IDP leagues. He had 4 tackles. One of them was for a loss and an assist. Good for a low-end linebacker 4. And the reason I still put him on here is because in most IDP leagues, you're usually starting for IDP linebackers, or at least most IDP leagues that I'm in anyway. So if you do start 4, he was a low-end 4 for you. But he also got a lot of opportunity to play this week. So there's a good chance that maybe those numbers continue to pick up. The big one, though, was Marcus Davenport, the defensive end Marcus Davenport, only 6% rostered in leagues right now. He had 3 tackles, 2 of them for loss, and 2 sacks, which is really huge for a defensive end. He was a top-notch defensive end in fantasy football this week. So that one was definitely a good pick, John. Let's see. Mark Ingram. I had Mark Ingram down. He's no longer eligible for our waiver wire show, 60% rostered, 60% rostered or less. So he's relatively more owned than most of the guys on this list. But he's still out there in a little bit of leagues, but mostly just wanted to kind of pop up that he was a top 10 running back before Monday Night Football. And I'm not sure that I saw anything tonight out of the running backs that really made me believe that he would have gotten knocked out of the top 10. But Rashad Bateman, myself, Andrew, and Joe all had Rashad Bateman down over the last couple of weeks. We've all been really big on him. Still only 32.5% rostered. He was a low-end wide receiver 2 in most formats, but his usage just keeps going up and up. So he's one of those guys that wasn't just a streamer for you. You're going to hang on to him. Speaking of guys you're going to hang on to, Ramondre Stevenson. So, Nate, after I talk about this one, I want you to kind of talk about Ramondre Stevenson for a second while I kind of catch my breath. But Ramondre Stevenson is only rostered in 9.9% of leagues. He finally had his big breakout game that I've been waiting for, and now it all begins. The time that I've been saying is going to happen ever since this offseason. Ever since the offseason, I was talking about how I thought that this guy was eventually going to be a household name. My home redraft with some buddies of mine, Alicia and Andy, I was out at their house and I was trying to say that, and everybody was like, "Who? Ramonda? Who's this guy?" Well, now you know, and it's about to become even bigger. But he was a top 3 running back this week, I mean, depending on the format, he was the number 2 running back in one of the leagues I'm in. But what do you think about Ramondre Stevenson? Is he a guy that we're going to hang on to for the rest of the season, or is it one of those? This is a Bill Belichick back, and we're bound to get bit by this.
I don't think he's a Bill Belichick back like normal. I mean, I know in the past, I don't know how many years it's been where it was like, oh yeah, I got LeGarrette Blount. Well, that worked out one year because he had a bunch of touchdowns. But like other than that, you never know what's going to happen. It was almost like the Niners, how it always was. It was never consistent. And Damian Harris has been that recently until he got hurt. And Ramondre was still getting carries regardless. But now, after last week, 20 carries for 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. I don't know if Damian Harris is getting the job back. I think he looks phenomenal. He's a bruiser and he's quick. I think it's his job to lose anymore.
I tell you what, I've been saying all along that Ramondre was the second most talented running back on that squad behind Damian Harris. So it's kind of interesting to me to hear that you're thinking that he might even be better than Damian Harris. So that'll really bode out well for me for a lot of my leagues if that's the case.
I was lucky enough to draft him in a couple dynasty leagues, and I think, like I said, I've been waiting like you have, kind of patiently. And the first week, but he had a couple fumbles the first week, and I was kind of a little upset. But I think we're past that.
3 healthy scratches throughout the season, just sprinkled in here. Belichick just sprinkling the lack of hope on all of us.
Yes.
All right, so a couple more running backs here. Devin Singletary, he's no longer eligible over the 60% threshold. He's a low-end RB2 this week. Let's see, Tony Pollard, 57.3% rostered. He was a mid to low-end RB2 this week in all formats. We also had Jordan Howard, 37.9% rostered, a flexible starter with 12 carries and 83 yards. Andrew brought you that one, which is still annoying to me because I was going the other way with the other running back there with Scott, and then Andrew threw out Jordan Howard, so he was right and I was wrong, and I don't like it. Brandon Bolden, 16.3% rostered, flexible starter. 6 touches for 70 yards. Andrew also brought you that one. Brandon Bolden is still – they're running the ball so much in New England. Both of them are very viable starters. So, obviously, in that case, I was the right one, and Andrew was less wrong or less right, but he was still more right than I was on Scott. So, I guess I can't really victory lap too much here. But we have a couple of tight ends from last week, 38.3% rostered as Tyler Conklin, who only had 3 catches for 11 yards, but 2 of those bad boys were for touchdowns. He was a top 5 tight end or better in all formats. And then Dan Arnold, Joe and Andrew both were all about some Dan Arnold this past week on the Waiver Wire show. And he is still only rostered in 28% of leagues, but he was a top 7 tight end in most formats before Monday Night Football. So maybe top 8 now because Kittle had a pretty decent game. He had 5 catches for 67 yards on 7 targets. So what I like about Dan Arnold over Conklin there is obviously the usage. More targets. He didn't get the touchdowns like Conklin did and still was able to finish as a top 10 tight end for you. So that's always good. Let's see a couple of wide receivers here still left on the list. We have Elijah Moore, 38.1% rostered, mid wide receiver 2 in week 10. Ben and Alex brought you that one. Andrew also brought you Christian Kirk. He's no longer eligible. He's finally over that 60% threshold. His percentage of ownership has just slowly, gradually gone up and up and up every single week that Andrew keeps telling you to pick him up. He was a flexible starter again this week with 7 catches on 8 targets for 58 yards. The Packers defense, your Packers defense, which I'll give you a moment to talk about here, Nate, in just a second, but 33.9% roster, top 5 defense in most formats before Monday Night Football with 2 interceptions and 3 sacks. How you feeling about your Packers defense?
Pretty good. It's weird to say that because I was so down on them for the first few weeks. And I don't know. It felt like yesterday that, if Rodgers isn't on, it's okay. In the past, it's been, if we don't score 40, we're in trouble. And now, it feels like things are working. And we were without, our 2 best defensive players, arguably, without Jair and Za'Darius. So it's exciting.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, being without one of your best players, I know how that feels as a Colts fan because we've been without the great Rodrigo Blankenship for the last 5 weeks. So that's why I gave you Michael Badgley last week in the Waiver Wire episode. 13.1% roster. He was a top 5 kicker this week in week 10 before Monday Night Football. So very least top 6 kicker because nobody did anything for the Rams. Let's see. So I think we're ready to move on to this week's picks. Nate, what do you think? You think you're ready to start off with the quarterbacks here?
I think I'm ready. We'll see. I'm a little nervous, but I'm okay.
All right, you got this.
All right. So first off, with quarterbacks, Justin gave us Trevor Siemian. I can't believe he's actually on here. like most of these guys. Only 3.7% rostered right now. He's a top 5 QB this week against the Titans. In week 9, he was the 15th best against Atlanta, so he's almost streamable then. Week 11, he'll face a very average Eagles defense, leaving a decent chance for him to be streamable again. And I couldn't agree more, which is weird. I really thought that when Taysom was healthy, it was going to be his he'd be under center, but I guess not because Taysom stinks. Now, Joe gave us Mr. Cam Newton, who I'm excited about myself. I picked him up in a couple leagues as soon as I saw the news come up. So Cam Newton's expected to start in week 11, so go ahead and dump Goff as your super flex or backup. ESPN shows him being on 12.6% of rosters. And another excerpt. Matt also had Cam. Shows he could still be a special fantasy asset and why he may have questions, by some, about his real football profile. His fantasy outlook is on the rise. Forget starting Mike White, Simeon, or Trevor Simeon. Cam will have a much higher floor and ceiling, and there's something special about him coming back to the Panthers.
Yeah, it was
QB1 on average for the rest of the year.
It was definitely exciting to see him finally get that touchdown, and then that second touchdown. He was all excited. So
I was pumped.
He looked like the Cam of old, though. And I mean, not for nothing, but I was trying to say all offseason that that I felt that his biggest struggle the last season was because of COVID. Because pre-COVID, he was pretty tough. Like, he was decent. Like, maybe not on a Patriot standpoint, but by fantasy standards, he was doing really well. And then after COVID, he looked like a totally different quarterback. And then he loses his job to Mac, which Mac is starting to work out for the Patriots. So I'm sure they were just kind of looking for the future. But I was surprised to see that Cam was a free agent for so long out there.
Yeah, I same thing. I mean, with some of the situations you see, and he's not there. I mean, I don't know. I thought it was crazy, but I hope he succeeds. I love Cam. I always have.
Yeah, as soon as he signed back with the Panthers, and I had heard that Darnold injury, suddenly, all of a sudden, it went from being a 4 to 6 week injury to now there's a chance he might be out for the rest of the season. Well, the reason he might be out for the rest of the season now is because they want to save face and trade him in the offseason because they got Cam Newton back. So, it's pretty obvious. So as soon as I saw that news, I went out and picked him up in a few leagues. So I'm pretty excited. I am really upset I didn't pick him up in my main money league because I don't have very much fab left. And after he came out and scored 2 touchdowns in his first 2 plays, it's pretty obvious that my fab money is going to be laughable in that league. But let's move on to the running backs here, and I'll take care of the running backs. Let's see. I'm going to start off with, and I don't know if I'm doing it in the right order because a couple guys threw in some late ones at the end, but I'm going to start off with Jeff Wilson here. Jeff Wilson is 9.5% rostered. We just watched him play right now in Monday Night Football tonight, and he looked pretty good for a guy that's been out all season long. But more importantly, he got a lot of opportunities. He had 10 carries for 28 yards. And what I noticed about those 10 carries in a lot of situations was that was against a really tough run defense with the Rams, but also in situations and downs where it was pretty obvious that they were going to run the football. And Shanahan still kept giving him the rock. And maybe it's because they were ahead and he wanted to save Eli a little bit more, Elijah, but maybe not. Like, maybe Jeff Wilson has earned his spot back and he didn't actually lose it to injury. So I kind of like what I saw tonight. I do feel like he's going to continue to get that usage, and whenever they play a less Arnold heavy defensive line, you might actually see more production out of them. Let's see, Nate. I'll let you read the next one because it's your guy, Patrick Taylor. So I'll let you talk about him.
My guy, I can't believe I put this down. He's not no ownership in any leagues. The only reason I put this down was because Aaron Jones sprained his MCL yesterday. It's a mild one, which is good, but it's next man up in Green Bay, which unfortunately is not Patrick Taylor. It's AJ the Sauce Dillon, but he's probably rostered. I know I don't remember, somebody on here has him a little later down the line because he's not quite 60%. But I think Taylor will be the second guy in line with Kylan Hill getting hurt a couple weeks ago. He didn't play as an undrafted free agent last year. There you go. Campy's got him. And he had 2 carries last week, which is fine, but he was pretty good in Memphis. Him and Darrell Henderson were a really, really good 1-2 punch, and he can catch the ball in the backfield really well. So, I think it'll, 1 or 2 weeks may not be enough, but if you need a running back, they're not going to give A.J. Dillon every carry.
Yeah, right. Very good. Alex threw in the 40.2% rostered Alexander Madison, and pretty interesting why he threw him on here. Obviously, we know about all the off-field issues that Dalvin Cook is facing right now, but the way he worded it here is kind of interesting to me, that there are people that are thinking this way. Not that I'm not, because I mentioned that the other day, kind of in the same light that Alex is. I'm pretty sure that it was with Mike and Alex that I was talking about this, and I was kind of told that, like, I'm viewing it the wrong way, and then now all of a sudden I see that Alex is viewing it the same way that I was. Like, I can't remember if it was Mike. It was probably Mike that disagreed with me, but because he does that a lot. But but with the off-field escapades and possible felonies of star Vikings running back Dalvin Cook, Madison needs to be rostered in all leagues and formats. He could be an excellent piece to help the playoffs, help with their playoff run if something does. I'm saying our fantasy playoff run, obviously, not the Vikings playoff run. If something does come out of Dalvin Cook and these accusations against him. So, obviously, this is kind of a big current event thing in the NFL, so I'm kind of interested to see how you feel about the whole Dalvin Cook thing, and whether or not you feel that something is potentially going to happen with him.
I don't know. When it all came out, I didn't even want to read about it, because I just get so frustrated hearing about all these scumbags doing stuff like this. And I hope, I said I called him a scumbag. Maybe he didn't even do it. I didn't read into it enough. I hope it's not true. I love Dalvin Cook. He's awesome to watch play football. He makes the game more fun. From what I've seen from Madison, there seems like he's got some juice, man. I think he's a pretty good running back. And if Dalvin's out, Madison is gonna. I mean, they're not scared to give him the ball like they do Cook. So.
Yeah, and the other thing too is opportunity is God when it comes to running backs in fantasy football. Yep. So, like, even if Madison is several notches down from Dalvin Cook, with all that opportunity, he's still going to be pretty darn good for your fantasy team, because you're picking him up for free off the waivers right now and not spending a first round pick on Dalvin Cook like you did in the draft. So yep. that value is a huge playmaker, and that's how you win playoff games in fantasy football. But on the other end of it, not the fantasy side of it, like I'm hearing a lot of people say that there were things like it was self-defense, or it was like she had a gun on him for one of the incidences or something. And then we saw the video where he was trying to leave the apartment and she kept getting in front of him and stopping him. But when you look at the pictures of her, like, I get that sometimes it could be self-defense, and a man may have to do something to get himself out of a situation. That was a whole lot of something. There's no way that a man his size, and her being as tiny as she was, that he would have done that much damage just in self-defense. You know what I mean? Like, I feel strongly that there had to be more to it than just self-defense. So, but and even still, like with the NFL, like they have their face, they got to worry about saving face. So, like, I mean, the Kareem Hunt thing was caught on camera, and he missed like half a season. Like
Ray Rice.
Yeah, Ray Rice, and never played football again. Like,
exactly.
I mean, I don't know. There's just so much out there, and it's like it's. I feel like when you live that life, because it happened multiple times. Like, after the first time, you didn't leave her, she didn't leave you, and then it happened again. It's happened multiple times. So, like, when you're living that life, it's going to come back and bite you. So there's that. I don't know.
That's
maybe
frustrating.
I'm wrong. Maybe he goes out, but I think I agree with Alex here. Something's going to happen.
Yeah.
Ramondre Stevenson is Alex's other one. We already talked about him a little bit earlier, but he says that it's getting cold outside, and this is the running backs rule. This is when the running backs rule the NFL. Damian Harris will come back eventually from the concussion, but I still think that Stevenson is at least going to have some sort of a role going forward, even when Harris is back. Not to mention, if something ever happens to Harris, Stevenson could be a big contributor down the stretch. Pretty much kind of the same thing that you and I were echoing a little bit ago. I've got Jordan Howard down here, or at least Joe has Jordan Howard down here. He says that Philadelphia has been getting their running legs under them recently, and that is true. I saw a stat where nobody has ran the ball more than Philadelphia with their running backs, or had more yards than their running backs in the last 2 weeks.
I hate that team.
Yeah, so you lose Miles Sanders, and your running game is amazing. So I don't know.
That's cool. They ran the ball 40 times against Denver.
Yeah, well, it happens. But he says Jordan Howard has been a big part of that, and he has. ESPN currently shows him being rostered in 37.9% of leagues. Over the past 3 games, Howard has put up over 200 yards strictly on the ground and 3 touchdowns. Unfortunately, though, his work has been strictly in the running game and has had no receptions. But I tell you what, Joe, even running backs that don't catch the ball can be great in PPR because they're still running the ball so much. So there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. Boston Scott does get a little bit of the receiving the catches out of the backfield, and then the rest of them go non-existent because Hurts just runs the ball. So there's that. Ty Johnson is rostered in 17.4% of leagues. Andrew still wants me to talk about him for some reason, but he said he had a horrible week for anyone in a Jets uniform. However, he led the team in targets and scored 8 fantasy points. He's a great bye-week fill-in for PPR running backs. And I'm not a big fan of the guy, but I can understand the allure and the luster. Like, it's like every once in a while that he happens to have something happen that looks really good. And I've just been bit too many times in the past. Too many
years. Stinks.
Yeah. Like, I remember when Ty Johnson was with the Lions and
yep.
The guy ahead of him, I think it was AP, even got hurt.
Yeah.
And then everybody thought, and I myself included, Ty was going to be the guy. And I went out and spent all this fab on him. And then he bit me in the ass because he was no good. But he was also a Lion. But also now he's a Jet. So I don't think that really I can really justify that. But you know what? I'll let you read the next one because it's your boy AJ Dillon. Now I know this one's your boy because I like this guy. Yeah. And he's a Packer. So I'm gonna let you read about him.
I'll scroll down here real quick.
Yeah, it was Andrew.
Where'd it go? I just had it in front of me. Oh, there it is. Okay.
My fault. I shouldn't have put you on the spot.
No, you're good. AJ Dillon's rostered in 59.6. Come on. That's pretty much there.
Yeah, I'm counting it because I've done that myself a few times.
I love it. Feels like cheating. However, check if he's on waivers. You have to add him. And to be honest with you, you have to add him even if Aaron Jones wasn't hurt. Right. I drafted AJ Dillon on almost. I probably have 90%. Whatever people call that, I can't think of the word. I mean, I have him all over the place, and I've still been starting him, even when Jones was healthy. I mean, he's averaging like over 4.5 yards a carry probably right now. He's been a monster, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I like the guy too. I agree with you, and he kind of reminds me a lot of that Ramondre Stevenson that we were talking about, where I was starting to own shares of Ramondre even before Damian Harris went down because you could see it. Like you just know it's there. And when you have that opportunity from a guy that you know has that ability, it's going to shine. So let's see. Ben threw out Donta Foreman. For those of you that don't know, he now plays for the Tennessee Titans, 1.5% rostered. It says he led the backfield in carries this week with 11. Maybe not. Maybe no particular one running back really emerges as the clear lead back in that Titans offense, but the running backs are dropping like flies. Foreman is worth an add in deeper leagues. That's true. If any running back that's getting any touches, if it's a deeper league, is definitely worth owning. So very true there. And before we jump into the wide receivers, I just want to talk about real quick. The NFL did a salute to service this weekend to the soldiers, and that's why I've got the background here. So just it was Veterans Day this week. There you go. Nate's got the Veterans Packers hat. So
a couple years old, but yeah,
it was Veterans Day this week. So thank you out there to all the veterans and what you do. To support us, and we'll do all we can to support your fantasy teams on our end for sure. But and then of course, quick shout out to Men's Health Awareness Month. make sure you go get yourself checked out. All right, so now we'll move on to the wide receivers because Andrew was patiently waiting back there with that screen up and ready to go. We're going to start off. Actually, I did the running backs. If you want to take over here for the wide receivers.
Yeah. So first off, Coach Shep's has got a couple for us. Byron Pringle, 3 games this season, above 10 PPR points. Not outstanding, but the Chiefs are going to chuck, especially next week against Dallas. Get a piece of the offense. If you're in desperate need of a flex play or a wide receiver 3, high risk, high reward for sure. It's been tough sledding with that offense, but I mean, he's kind of been throwing the ball everywhere, so it's not a bad one to own. DeAndre Carter looked good in Week 10 and now has back-to-back 14 PPR point performances. He's not tied to a guy like Mahomes, but I still think it's similar value to pick up like Pringle, who listed above, which I agree. And I know Carter was returning kicks, so if you're in a league that gets points for that, could help out. Next one that I put, Kendrick Bourne Ultimatum. You know, had to get some cool nickname. 3.1% rostered. Quietly, he's racked up 15 catches for 238 yards and a touchdown in the last 4 weeks. He's not Macaroni Jones' number 1 target, but he's getting a handful of targets, and he's making them work. They've been on a tear of late. I mean, they look good. And I don't think they're slowing down, especially against the Falcons this week. So if you can get, part of that offense, and Jones has been pretty good. So pick him up. The next one I put on here, and I don't know why I did. I can't even say his name. Ben Skowronek. He's a rookie, 7th rounder for the Rams. 0.3%. I don't know how he's going to fit in the offense, to be honest. He had 5 targets tonight. He had 3 catches for 30 against the Texans in Week 8. And McVay actually said a couple days ago that he was going to take that Bob Woods role in the offense. And he was out on the field quite a bit. I don't know. I should have got a snap percentage, but I didn't. But, they run a lot of open sets, 4 wide and stuff like that. So he may be worth an ad. I know 1 catch tonight, but.
Well, I mean, to be fair, we started recording right as the final was showing up on the screen. So it's kind of hard to get stats like snap percentages right away like that. So I think you're doing a great job.
This one, Rich, Jamal Agnew, 9.4%. He said a couple weeks back as he is what everyone thought Chenault should have been. That just ruined my day talking about how bad Chenault's been. Becoming a part of the team's game plan every week. Jacksonville will be behind the game, so he's always involved. Another guy, kick returner, I believe.
Yeah.
Another one from Rich. Surprise, surprise. The Raider of the week is Brian Edwards. I can't say anything. I've been putting Packers on there every week because we keep getting guys hurt, so it doesn't matter. 15.2%. After this weekend's game against the Chiefs, he showed he's capable wide receiver. And if he's in the game plan, he should have a steady 10-point floor. I agree. He looked good early in the year, I thought, too.
And and I'll read the next one. Andrew has down here because I was shocked. I thought it was Joe, but Joe did not have any New York Giants on his list.
Campy's a big Giants fan. Don't let him fool you.
Oh, that one might get you booted from the show.
He's gonna kick me off the show.
So I was shocked when I saw Sterling Shepard on here, and I didn't see it under Joe's name. But Andrew actually showing some Giants love here. 49.3% rostered. The only thing stopping Shepard from being a very solid asset is his health. And true. When healthy, he's the wide receiver 1 for the Giants. Get him, especially if you have IR spots. I like it. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you there, but I had to
no, you're good.
Joe a little bit of a shot.
Another one from Campy, another phenomenal New York City wide receiver. Actually, this one is good. Eli Moore, 38.1% rostered. He's been mentioned in a couple previous weeks. Very strong role in the Jets lineup, and he's looked pretty good. I don't know who's going to be throwing him the ball, but he's definitely getting targets. So
I'm surprised
another one
put him on the dock before Andrew did.
Yeah, I know. Oh well, it's hard to put down Jets. They just. Another one from Campy, Monday Night Special. Van Jefferson, 55.1% rostered. As someone who isn't sure on OBJ, get Van Jefferson now with Woods gone for the year. He said he might delete this if he's horrible. He's not. Van Jefferson's a good receiver, dude. I love Van Jefferson.
Yeah, no, and he didn't he didn't disappoint tonight either. He had 3 catches for 58 yards, almost caught a touchdown, but kind of bobbled it there and ended up going out of bounds. But he had 7
Not the
targets.
best throw.
He's that target usage is going to continue to ride. Even before Woods went out, the last 3 weeks before this week, he had 7 targets, 6 targets, 7 targets, and then 7 again this week. So he's going to be utilized.
Yeah, he's a good route runner, and he's supposed to be. He'll be where he's supposed to be, and that's huge. Especially for a guy like Stafford. So, pick him up. Another one. Oh, this one. Ben Jefferson. People might be excited for OBJ with the Woods injury. However, with OBJ signing, Van's value looked dead in the water, and now with Woods injury, right back up again. The Rams are very often in 3 and 4 wide receiver sets, and his game is essentially a clone of old Bobby Trees, which that is very true. So, yeah, I think we're both in on Van Jefferson.
Yeah.
Another one from Ben, Rashad Bateman, 32.5% owned. Rashad has appeared in the document multiple times, but somehow still eligible, despite showing out when on the field. 14 catches off 22 targets for 210 yards in the last 3 weeks. The arrow is still pointing up. He might be a high-end wide receiver, too, come the fantasy playoffs, which I could definitely see that. I loved him coming out, and he has looked the part for sure.
Yeah, if you're averaging pretty much almost 5 catches for a little over 7 targets, and that averages out to about 70 yards as well per week, that's good as a wide receiver too in fantasy, regardless. And then you throw in the fact that he's bound to get some touchdowns pretty soon. He's got that wide receiver 1 upside already. So, yeah, absolutely good call there to jump on that bandwagon. We've got a whole lot of names listed on him as success stories up here at the top. So, we're gonna add you in that list too, Ben. So, now let's jump ahead to the tight ends. You got to remember my color coding here. So my tight ends are green, and I actually threw down 3 tight ends for this episode because a lot of times I've noticed here recently the tight ends have started to slip on the show. So I kind of went and did some research and did some digging, and I found one of those cheat codes and found a guy that was just under the 60%. Not quite as cheating as Andrew, but pretty close. 53.5% rostered is Hunter Henry. And why not? The dude had a touchdown in 5 of the last 6 games before this week. And then this week he turns around and has 2 more touchdowns against the Browns. And now he gets to face the Falcons in week 11. So the Patriots are going to score a lot in that game. So why not grab one of Mac Jones's, or as Nate likes to call him, Macaroni Jones, one of his best favorite targets in Hunter Henry. And tight ends are touchdown dependent when you're streaming them. So why not get one that's scoring touchdowns? CJ Uzoma, 17% rostered. He was dropped in a lot of leagues because he had back-to-back subpar performances. I know Burrow got really banged up in one of those games. Another game that the Browns are usually fairly decent against tight ends. They did give up those 2 to Hunter Henry this week, but then the Jets also, he had a subpar game against them. And then he followed that up with a bye week in week 10. So there's a lot of reasons why a lot of people dropped him. His usage or his roster percentage has gone way down. So he's primed for the pick-in again this week against the Raiders. They are 5th worst in the league against tight ends. The Raiders are. So CJ Uzoma, go out and pick him up. He should have a really good streamable week for you. I'm kind of projecting about 70 yards and a touchdown for Uzoma on maybe 4 to 5 catches. So that's a pretty big streamable tight end for you. That's a number 1 tight end for you. So Pat Freiermuth, I threw him back on this list because that dude, he had a bad week this week, but he didn't have Big Ben, and I think that made a huge difference. But the way this waiver wire episode works is once you put a guy on there, as long as he continues to perform, I'm adding him to the next week's list automatically, and I'm getting credit for him. So I'm going to keep getting credit for this guy because now he's going to be facing the Chargers, who are the 4th worst team in the NFL against tight ends. So he's going to have a big week this week. He's going to start getting more and more usage, which he's already getting a lot of usage. So I really like this pick right here. So those are the 3 tight ends I gave you. And then also Joe wrote about Pat Freiermuth here. He said only put up 31 yards and 5 receptions, but that was off of 9 targets, so his ceiling is much higher. He's developed into one of the Steelers' top targets over the last 3 weeks, and there's no reason why that should change, given some injuries at their wide receiver position, which is also true. ESPN shows them, I already talked about that, 49.5% rostered. Andrew also mentions Freiermuth and Dan Arnold. He said, don't forget about those guys from previous weeks. Make sure you check them out as well. Make sure they're not still unowned in your league. Go pick them up. And then he also wants to remind you that Logan Thomas should be back. He's probably going to be back this next week. 49.5% rostered, back from injury. Grab him. Let's see, especially since it's a tight end wasteland out there. Very true. That's it for the tight ends. So what's our next category here? After the tight ends, we have it's like a miscellaneous. It's the hodgepodge.
Defense and kickers.
Yeah, defense, kickers, IDP, which we don't have any IDP this week. John gave us a week off from the IDP guys, which is good because when I read those half the time, I have no idea who they are. So there's that. I'll let you read up on the defenses. Actually, you know what? I'm kind of happy about all of these. I'm the guy that does all the kickers.
Hey, that's you.
I'm going to read all of these because I did some decent, extensive searching earlier today. So I want to mention it. I've got the Browns defense on here, 58.2% rostered. They get to face Jared Goff. So that should be enough of a reason. But the Lions have given up the seventh most sacks, 27, to opposing defenses. And the Browns have the most sacks in the league as a team with 29 this season. So there's going to be a lot of sacking of Jared Goff. Okay. They're not going to be able to keep the Browns off of Jared Goff. So there's a whole lot of sacks there. That's a lot of fantasy points for your Browns. A great streaming option. Another great streaming option, the Panthers defense, 48.9% rostered. They have the fourth most sacks in the league on the season at 27, and they're playing the Washington football team. They have the seventh most turnovers in the league so far this season. So there could be turnovers there. There could be a lot of sacks, but the Panthers statistically are also one of the better defenses in the league, and they're only not rostered because a lot of people feel like that's a mirage. Kind of feel like, though, after this week, because they had a pretty good week this week. As a matter of fact, I own the Panthers in a lot of leagues and went out of my way to pick up some streamers to avoid playing them against Arizona, and they still scored 19 points.
They beat the shit out of the Cardinals.
It was an embarrassment.
God.
I'm like, why did I not just go ahead and play the Panthers defense? Like, so many times I like to play the matchup when I'm talking defenses and kickers and stuff. And sometimes just roll with your studs. And the Panthers defense, they're a stud.
Start your studs.
There you go. And then the Titans defense, not so much a stud, but also still playing really well this season. And not just because they get to play the rest of the AFC South twice, but 45.5% rostered. They're facing the AFC South Texans this week in Week 11. The Texans have given up the 9th most sacks on the season, and the Titans have the 4th most sacks as a team. So the Texans are bound to give up a whole lot to the Titans in the way of sacks, but the Texans also give up the 4th most turnovers. The Titans are in the top 9 in both interceptions and fumble recoveries. So there should be a real good opportunity, statistically speaking, for the Titans to get both turnovers and sacks, which is what you want in fantasy football for team defenses. Let's see. I have 2 kickers for you here. So I'm going to talk about Chris Boswell first, 48.3% rostered. The Chargers give up the 6th most made field goals in the NFL. Boswell is a top 5 kicker in the league. This game is at SoFi Stadium, so the weather isn't going to be an issue. The Chargers bend but don't break defense, along with the Steelers' run-heavy style offense, really bodes well for Boswell to have a good game this week. And then Jason Sanders, 39.9% rostered. When Tua is healthy and running the offense, the Dolphins kicker scores a lot of points. Without Tua, he doesn't. Jason Sanders was actually one of the kickers that was drafted in a lot of leagues to start the season, and then he was dropped by a lot of leagues whenever Tua went out. You may not necessarily connect those two things together, but Tua
can't score touchdowns.
Exactly. There you go. That's the right way to put it. So Tua moves the ball with his legs, which is great for fantasy purposes a lot of times. But it doesn't always necessarily turn into touchdowns, and you do need to be able to do more with the ball. So that's where Jason Sanders comes in. He gets those field goals whenever Tua can't punch it in. But Sanders was back to his typical top 10 role this past week. He scored double digits, and in Week 11 they get to face the Jets, who have given up the third most points or the third most made field goals to opposing kickers. Nate, I think that's actually our list. I think it's everybody.
Real quick, pick up the Titans defense for sure. Not just for like next week, but they have like one of the easiest schedules in the league remaining. I mean, they play the Texans twice, play the Jaguars once. I mean, right there, that's enough to pick them up.
Yeah. Actually, I've got it pulled up right here. So, if your championship is going to be in Week 18, that's when they play the Texans the second time. So that's something that is something to consider. But if it's in Week 17, that's Miami. So that's Tua.
Yeah.
So
there you go.
That's still pretty good. Up until
arguably worse than the Texans.
Yeah. Up until tonight, San Francisco sucked. So they have San Francisco in Week 16 if they revert back to being San Francisco again. And then they do have Pittsburgh, which, who knows? That's a kind of a bipolar matchup right there and a bye week. So you don't want this to be – and New England. So you don't want this to be your only defense. But if you've got the spot to play back and forth defenses, you get them and the Panthers and kind of play the matchups from week to week, you're probably going to be in pretty good shape.
Yes.
All right. Right on. So do you have anything else you want to talk about?
No, man, just excited. I was happy for thanks for letting me come on and have fun with you. It was a good time. Excited for tomorrow night.
Absolutely, man. I'm glad you came on. Yeah, we got our normal weekly show tomorrow night, roughly, 8:30 Eastern time typically, I feel like, is about what time we usually go. So we have the patreon.com/toilets at Nate_Dirt19 right there. Myself at JustinFF_ at Andrew Campy, in case you want to check out the Twitter handle for the absolute best producer that money cannot buy.
They probably already know him, dude. That guy went viral like 2 or 3 times this weekend with all sorts of tweets. He's on fire right now, man.
Yep, everybody wants a piece of the camp. All right, man. I think that's it for us, and I'm not going to do an outro.